shall we start now?
Sure.
Okay, so is this your first time to be in Japan?
Very first.
So what is the impression about it?
I could live here. I like it so much. I think maybe I contemplate retiring in Japan now. You know, I like everything about it. The people, it's peaceful. The water is so good. The coffee is good. You know, all I need is this.
Great. So you started as more of a heavy metal band, Jackhammer at first.
You're right.
Yeah, so what bands were your early influences when you started Jackhammer?
I was in a band called Toxic.
First.
Toxic. And then Tony Scaglione, the drummer, was in Jackhammer. And we met each other through college radio station. And I joined Jackhammer. Then we decided to move on and start our own band, and that's when we started WHIPLASH. Tony Scaglione and I, and we had Tony Bono, the band, the three Tony.
So what bands were the biggest influence at first?
Well, all the San Francisco Bay Area bands like Exodus, especially Exodus, Possessed, Metallica. Those were our big influences, and I used what I learned from them and what I learned at Berklee College of Music and when I went to school for music, and I think a mix of what I've learned from college and the San Francisco Bay influence and my East Coast style made WHIPLASH our own distinct sound, you know. And that's what's kept us alive and surviving this long. It's not like there's any very similar band to WHIPLASH, I think.
Definitely.
We have our own sound.
So the Bay Area thrash metal bands were the trigger to playing faster and faster for you?
Definitely. Yeah, they were a big influence on me. And we did our first show ever. WHIPLASH played in Berkeley, California at Ruthie's. Yes, and that was, and Metallica and Exodus were there to witness our first show with Possessed, and Jeff from Possessed and them guys let us use their whole back line. So it was really convenient for us, and we never seen a crowd at that point, back in 1985, go so crazy and do stage diving and all of that. You know, it was a real good influence on us, and you know, I hold that close to my heart to this day.
So how come your first show was not in New Jersey or New York, but in San Francisco?
That's a good question. I think our album was out before we even played our first show, but we had and we had our girl that was our connection in California, and she said, come out here and you know you could play your show, and it just so happened that it was our first show. We had never played in the East Coast at the time. Our first show was on the West Coast of the United States.
Hey! So was Power and Pain out in 85? 86? Some say it was 85.
I know, there's still a disagreement in the band members too.
Really?
I think it was 85, but Tony Scaglione says it was 86. But it may have been released earlier in Europe and different in the States, but I'm not really sure about when it came out.
And New York City was the first hotbed for crossover scene, you know, heavy metal and hardcore. Did you get any influence from hardcore music?
We did, especially Tony, I think, because he played in
Tony?
Scaglione. Because he played in several different bands after WHIPLASH. But we were very involved in the CBGB scene, and that was more of a hardcore club. But all the guys like Agnostic Front and bands like that from New York, and we were from New Jersey, they took us under their wing, and I guess they liked our music and liked us and what we were doing, and we became like a brotherhood with the hardcore bands from New York, which is still a little difficult for me to understand why, because we were thrash from New Jersey and they're hardcore from New York, but it was like a brotherhood. And even Roger and Vinny from Agnostic Front and Pete Steele, Carnivore, Typo, sang background vocals on the first Whiplash album, Power and Pain. So it was special. We shared the same manager also at the time, so that was a little bit of a catalyst to that whole scene at the time.
How was the atmosphere? Do you feel that something totally new was being created back then? Totally new scene and new music?
Definitely. That's a good question, because we totally felt like we were one of the pioneers in evolving thrash metal back in, because it really started in about 1982, and we picked up on it in 84. So we really weren't the first ones doing it, but we were at the very beginning of when it just started to bloom like a flower, an evil flower. So, but that we really felt like we were a part of the evolution of thrash metal, and I think it stands to this day that people recognize us as one of the pioneer bands of thrash metal, which I like, and I appreciate that.
So are there any bands that were totally unknown but we should know from the era from New York?
Well, I see now that I'm involved in the local area scene in New Jersey especially, there are some really good thrash bands that are young and like the next generation of thrash. And I'm in the position now and lucky enough to bring one of those bands from New Jersey here to Japan and this show that we're doing tonight. And they're called Thanatic Desire. And they are gonna kick ass tonight, and you'll see how good they are. And I wouldn't bring a band to Japan that was just okay. I'm bringing a band here for you that you're gonna love. They're just so good and fast and tight. They're the next generation of thrash metal.
Okay, looking forward to it tonight. Okay, so then the Thrash Till Death, the song was on Speed Metal Hell. So did you have any talk about signing to New Renaissance Records back then?
We did have a deal with New Renaissance at one time, and they're a very respectable label, and we never had a problem with them. I forget what album they released, but they did work with us, and we never had a problem with them. I would gladly work with them again in the future.
Okay, so there was just a talk that never happened. I mean the album one, because you decided not to sign to New Renaissance Records.
We did have a deal with them, but I'm not sure what album it was. Maybe it was Messages in Blood. One of the albums we did with New Renaissance. Yeah.
Okay. So you were also in Caligula back then. So
but that was only for about 4 weeks.
Oh, really? Just 4 weeks?
And we never really recorded any songs or played any live shows, so it just came about and fizzled out pretty fast. It wasn't something that really turned into something that would be, very popular. It just, I guess I was still focusing on Whiplash mainly, and it just didn't pan out. But I like them guys; they're really cool. And one of the guys, Eddie, just came to our show that we played in New York City last week. So it was good to see him, Eddie Klinger, again. So that was cool.
And it's been 30 years since Power and Pain was released. So looking back, how do you see this album?
At the time when we recorded it and it was released, we had no idea how popular it was going to be. But 10 years later, we realized, when you keep hearing it from the fans and see what it meant, and it still is the most popular Whiplash album, and then it's the first one. So it is something that I look back on and I could be very proud of now, you know. But at the time, we had no idea how big that album was really going to be. Like now, you look back and we were just playing our music and writing and doing what we do and having fun. Had no idea how big it would be, but now, you know, it's nice to be able to understand and recognize how big it was, you know.
Yeah.
But at the time, we had no idea.
And some say Power and Pain is the best album of Whiplash. What do you think of that kind of, the first is the best opinion? Do you agree with them, or?
I can't agree or disagree, you know, it's up to them, and most people do say that, most people, 90%, maybe 95%. So I have to play those songs live because I want to give the people what they want, you know, so that's what I do, and you'll see, if you were there last night or tonight, you'll see we do many songs of Power and Pain, or probably 8 or 9, you know, because that's what everyone wants to hear, and that's probably what they listen to most out of the Whiplash collection is Power and Pain. So that's what they want to hear, and last night the response from the fans was fantastic. So all I have to do is the same thing I did last night tonight, and it'll be a total success.
So, what is your favorite Whiplash album?
Well, there's one album that never got the recognition that it really should have gotten, and that was the one where I had the reunion with Tony Scaglione and Tony Bono. It was the album called Thrash Fest,
98.
and at that time, I was really focusing on my guitar leads and my technique and everything, using the theory that I got from Berklee College of Music. And if you listen to my leads on that album, they're some of my most impressive leads, I think, and the technique and everything that was put into that album and the recording was something that I like to look back on, and something that I'm very proud of. And I wish that it had more publicity, and you know, anyone listening, if you could go to YouTube and listen to that album. I hope you have the same point of view that I do, because Thrashback is one of my favorite Whiplash albums.
The second album, Ticket to My End. So I remember you told me classical thrash metal back then. I saw an interview in the fan. What's the meaning of the classical thrash metal? Does it mean you got influence from classical music, or?
I was always into playing like a classical music style. I did like to incorporate it then, and we did that in the live shows also. We have a classical piece that we used to always play by Ferdinando Carulli, and I still like to do it to this day, but we haven't done it live recently. But yeah, I'd like to incorporate that classical style every now and then, but in the set that we're doing here in Japan, it's just going to be all balls out thrash. There's not going to be. There is one song where we do some like mellow picking, but mostly 99% is just going to be speed.